So today we're going to learn how to take an image file, some type of clip art or whatever it is that you have that you want, and turn that into a stitch file, something that you could actually stitch out on an embroidery machine. And that process of turning an image into something that you can stitch is called digitization. And there are a lot of softwares out there for digitizing, but most of them are very expensive. But we're going to use the one today called Inkscape that is absolutely free to download and free to use. So you want to go to inkscape.org if you don't already have that on your computer. Download that software, follow the instructions there. Once you have that downloaded, then you are going to go to inkstitch.org and download this extension that you're going to need to be able to use in Inkscape for embroidery. Once you have those two things downloaded, you're ready to start. Now you want to open up Inkscape and choose the option here for New Document. If it's your first time setting it up, it may come some other options first. Just go with them and then click on New Document. Now over on the left side, you will see your document. Yours may look different than mine because you might have your properties set to a different size. So that's what we want to adjust first. Go to File and then Document Properties. And here you'll see what unit your is set to. So you can choose inches, millimeters. Make sure that you put it in whatever it is that you want to use. And then here for your width and your height, you want to set those to be whatever hoop size it is that you're going to use. You don't want to set it to just something super large and then just make your design smaller. You want to actually set that to be the hoop size. First of all, it'll help you make sure it fits within the hoop. And also, if you make it too large, the embroidery machine may not be able to read your file at all, even if your design's small, because it's going to use this as the hoop size. So make sure you set it to whatever hoop size you're planning to use. Maybe that's a 4x4 for a smaller one, 5x7 for medium, 8x12 for something larger. And then you will have that set. Now you can click on the button to close out of Document Properties. Now I want to actually get whatever it is I want to embroider into Inkscape. So I'm going to, you can click on File Import, or you can just have the two windows open and drag in whatever it is you want to embroider. So I'm going to start with a simple image here, just a word mark file. And I can check here on the import type. I usually leave all these settings as are and click on OK. That will import in the image, and then you can resize it to make sure it fits within your hoop or within your document size here. And next I want to actually take the image file and turn it into a file that I will be able to work with. So to do that, I'm going to use the trace bitmap function. Once you've used it before, it will actually show up here on your bar. If you haven't used it before, though, it won't. It's this little green tool, that's what you're looking for. But if you don't see it here, then look under Path, and then here you'll have the option for Trace Bitmap. Now you do want to now see over here, make sure you see a preview of your image. If you don't, make sure you have this image selected before you click Trace Bitmap. Sometimes that causes an issue. And now I want to make sure that I choose which method I want to use to trace the bitmap. Now, this is a very simple image, just a black text on a white background, so I could use almost any of them. But for simplicity's sake and consistency's sake, I like to use multicolor and change that to colors. Now the default is 8 different colors. In this case, I need 2 colors, one for the background and one for the image itself, for the letters. So I'm going to change that to 2. And with that changed, I also want to click on the check mark here, remove the background. Depending on what your image is, you may need the background, but for me here, I don't want that. So I'm going to make sure I remove the background. And then for the details, let's leave the speckles at 2, the smooth corners at 1, and optimize at 0.2. And now I'm going to click here on the button to apply. Now it doesn't appear that much happened other than the arrow switched to be around the text instead of around the outer wall here. Now to see what actually happened there, I need to click on Layers and Objects. So there's a button up here, Layers and Objects. If you don't see that button, if you'll click on Layer and then Layers and Objects, you'll be able to see it. And now you can see under Layer 1, I have Image 1 and Path 1. Image 1 is the original file that I imported, just the image file. It doesn't do me any good here. I'm going to click on the eyeball to hide that. You could delete it, but it could always happen that you need it later, so sometimes it's best just to hide it. And then path 1 shows me what it has actually traced out here, and this is what would actually be embroidered. Now this is a super simple project here, and so I don't have to rename it, but it's always a good idea to identify what this is so that I'll be able to find it later, especially if I get in a more complex design. So to change the name, I can double click it, and I'm going to change here black. I could also just call it text or whatever I wanted to, something to identify it. If you want to change the color of how this appears, you can actually come down here and change whatever color you want it to be. So if I wanted the text to be red, I could make it red. In that case, obviously I wouldn't want to call it black anymore, so I'll change that to red. So now I have this created. I just want to check and make sure what it looks like, get a preview. So I can click here on extensions and then ink stitch and then params. And this will show me a preview of what it looks like when it is stitched out. I can make any adjustments that I need to, and that looks good. So I can click here on apply and quit. Now I need to export it so that I can get it to my embroidery machine. So I'm going to click here on File and Export. You'll also eventually have this little tab on your bar up here. And now I want to check here, and I want to change the type of file, and I want to choose the option PES for the Brother embroidery format. And then here's where I can change the name. So let's give it a name that I will recognize. And then I can click on Export. And now it has saved that file to my computer. I want to transfer it over to the USB stick or however you get it to the embroidery machine. And then you will be able to stitch out a fill stitch version of this logo or whatever it is that you created. Now let's try that same thing with a multicolored project. So I'm going to drag in my next project that I want to create, make sure that I like everything in that box and click on OK. And now you can see I have a design that has 5 colors to it. It has light gray, it has medium gray, black, white, and red. So now I need to do just like I did before and trace that bitmap so that I have something to work with. So I'm going to click on that file there to trace the bitmap. Now I want to make sure that I choose multicolor. And this time I see it started with 8. I want to take it down to the 5 colors that I have. Now notice what happens if I go below that. If I go down to 4, it gets rid of that light gray outline and changes it to white. If I go down to 3, it'll change the red to black. I go down to 2, it'll also get rid of the medium gray and change that to white. So you can change the number of colors that your project has if you want to, or you can actually count the colors and figure out how many it needs to have. Now notice on this project that I have a white background and I also have white inside of my project. So in this case, I don't want to click on remove background because if I do, it will also remove the white part. So we'll go in and manually remove the background after we've traced the bitmap. Okay, once you're happy with the number of colors, make sure again that these look similar to that, and then click on apply. Now I want to go into my layers and objects panel. And you can see I have my image file. I want to hide that. If you don't hide that image file, you're always going to see that and not be able to tell what your stitch file looks like versus what your image file looks like. And now I can see that I actually have 5 paths, and I want to actually mark out what those are so I know what it is. And the way I can find that out is if I hide it, I can see what disappears. Okay, so if I click on that little eyeball, it'll make it disappear. I can see, oh, this is the black. So if I double click on path 1, I can change that and make it say black. Okay, path 2, I can see, okay, this is the red. Path 3 is the medium gray. Path 4 is the light gray. And path 5 is the white. Okay, and now you can see I have 2 different pieces of white, but I want to delete the background because I don't want it to actually print that. So I'm going to select the white and then click on Extensions, choose Ink Stitch, go down to where it says Tools, Fill, and click Break Apart Fill Objects. And that's going to break that apart into every section that has white in it. Okay, so I can go with Simple here and then click on Apply. And now I can see that it is broken apart. I can close that window. And now when I pull out my layers again, I can see now I have lots of whites. Okay, so if I choose the whites, I can see what they are. So that's the eyeball. That's the other eyeball. Okay, that's a piece of the background. So I'm going to have it selected and click Delete. That's another piece of the background. So I'll hit Delete. Another piece of the background, so I can click on Delete. Another piece, and another piece. And that is this part here in the middle. So now I have just the 3 pieces of white all together there. And now to keep things simple, I can combine these back together. So I'm going to select all 3 of those by holding down the Shift key. And now I'm going to go where it says Path, and then select Combine to make that back into a single path so that I have it all nicely labeled here with the 5 colors. Now let's see what that looks like. I can go to Extensions, and then I can go to Ink Stitch, and then Params. So again, make sure you have nothing selected, otherwise it will only show you that single color being stitched out. Now I can watch how it's going to stitch this out. Okay, so that looks good. You can see my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors and the order that it would stitch them out. So now I can click here on Apply and Quit. And now I'm ready to export the file. So now to do that, I can click here on this Export button and make sure that I change it to a PES format. And then give it a name that I'll recognize. You can also change which folder it goes in. You can put it somewhere directly. And I'm going to change it and call it the mascot color. Okay, and then save your file. And now you're ready to put that onto your USB stick, take it to your embroidery machine, and print or stitch that out. And so that's how you do the basic fill stitch. Check out part 2 if you also want to learn how to do the satin stitch.